Hey guys, I want to welcome you to the weekly Wednesday for the Financial Freedom newsletter, where every week, every Wednesday, we delve into something inspirational, motivational, something excerpt taken from the Financial Freedom weekly newsletter. Wherever you are, if you're listening on Spotify, on iTunes, Google, be sure to click the like, subscribe, share, comment. And without ado, let's get into the show. Guys, welcome to this week's podcast episode for the Financial Freedom for Physicians podcast. And I'm really excited about today's guest, Lindsay McLaughlin. She started out her career in the healthcare profession as a nurse, then did a career transition. She's now a real estate investor. She dubs herself as a professional mompreneur, and she's also a CEO. So it's going to be a great conversation for the audience. I think it'll resonate with them. So Lindsay, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we connected through Podmatch, and so tell the audience about yourself and how you got started, and we'll get into it.
Yeah, sure. So you did a great introduction. By trade, I was a nurse for 7 years. I worked in surgery, but meanwhile, I was also trying different businesses and trying to do that. My goal was to be completely self-employed by the time I was 30, so I could be with my kids and be my own boss. I ended up quitting my job kind of on a whim by the time I was 29, and have not looked back. We've done multiple businesses, but real estate investing was what I went right into, and then that led me to residential assisted living. And I've been building up that business now, teach others in that space and how to do that. And I live life on my terms. So go for financial freedom, time freedom, and it's been great.
That's so awesome. Your story really resonates with mine. I actually did the same thing on a whim, just turned in my keys, badge, and pager, and did the same thing. Invested in single family residential real estate. It's interesting how you were always talking about eventually you wanted to find ways to fire your boss and fire your employer, which I think everybody should be doing. So yeah, like I said, one thing is a lot of healthcare professionals, they're kind of golden handcuffed. They can't walk away. They've got family, mortgage, everything, debt. And so how do you overcome that fear of taking that first step? A lot of healthcare professionals want to do what you do, get into real estate, do other things. Tell us.
Yeah, I think to overcome that fear, it's to really focus on what it is that you want. I know that was for me. I actually felt so trapped working those 12-hour shifts, working in the hospital. I felt so trapped, and it just weighed on my chest so heavy that at one point I just couldn't handle it anymore. So then to just overcome that fear, in healthcare, we get great benefits, right? The 401k and the health insurance and all that. When I talk with a lot of nurses and people in healthcare to go about this, they're like, yeah, but what about that, Lindsay? I'm like, what about that? There's so many other opportunities out there. And I have better health insurance now, and I'm paying not much more. And the 401k, well, I create that on my own. I have a self-directed that I own real estate in. That's way better than what my stocks could have done. So just thinking outside of the box versus inside that box, and just kind of what the institution tells you. But it's also like what you feed your brain, right? I mean, if you're only going to your job and then you're watching the news and you're just living like society wants you to, you're going to stay in that box. But if you start feeding your brain outside things and listening to people like you and, really going after, again, what you want, then you're just going to naturally go that way and think outside the box. So that's how I like to believe anyway.
Yeah, no, it's wonderful. It's, once people get a taste of, what's possible and really, I think it's a lot of it's the fear, but, it's really fears that are legitimate, concerns, because, you have to survive and feed your family and have a shelter. So these are huge decisions. And one question that I had is, the audience may have is, did you how long did it take for you to actually prepare to take the leap? I know you did it on a whim, but talk about the preparation. Was it years? Were you reading about stocks, real estate, 3 years, tell us more.
That's always in my mind. I knew eventually I was going to do it, but then to actually take that leap. So I was pregnant with my second kid, and I said it was on a whim, but I think I was like 4 months pregnant. And I said, when I have this baby, I'm not coming back. So I guess I gave myself a window, like a 5, 6 month window there of, okay, just so you know, I'm leaving and I'm not coming back when I have the baby kind of thing. So during that time, I started to wholesale. I started to get single families. We started flipping homes, started creating notes, started doing all that. I was losing my butt though, let me tell you. I was not making great decisions, but I learned a lot. But I did give myself, I guess, like that little bit of cushion. So it wasn't like I walked in, said I quit, and then walk out. I told him I'm quitting, but once I have the baby. So yeah, that's how that went down.
Yeah.
If that answers your question.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. It was yeah, I have stories, talking about trading from my room, and once I was able to generate a stable income, then I was like kind of side income, and then eventually it was like, oh, I can take this full time. And it took me actually 4 or 5 years to learn the lessons, but yeah, it's quite the people are like because people want out now. A lot of people want to get out now, and they're like, that's like a rash decision. You have to prepare, and you have to make sure you have savings, and you have other income sources, your spouse. The other question is that, a lot of people, they want to keep it secret. For you, you made it public, but sometimes there's employer backlash. So how do you navigate that? Do you keep it secret, build your side income, and then one day go in and say I quit? Or is it like kind of tell us more?
Well, I feel like everybody has a different story with that, right? Or a different situation with their employer, like you said. But I also believe that there's a lot of power with intention. So if you're just keeping it secret and it's all up in your head, then you could easily justify never pulling the trigger, right?
Yeah.
When you actually tell somebody, and then you're like held accountable. Like, I'm quitting my job on a set date, or I'm going to make enough money by a set date to be able to walk away from my job, then it makes it intentional. You're actually going to follow through. So I believe there's a lot of power in your words, and by actually doing that and telling somebody else versus just keeping it all secret. But I guess maybe I'm not a very secretive person anyway.
I feel like
you were talking before, you were talking before though about like preparing yourself and getting things set up. And I think that's important, especially when you're needing to replace a large income. But I think a lot of that though could be used in the opposite way for people, where then they get stuck in that. Well, if I have to make this much money before I can do this or before I can do that. And you may also always get stuck in that pattern. There's always going to be something else, right? And you just start making excuses for that. So at some point you just have to take action and just do it. It's just like having a baby, right? So people were like, "Well, I'm just not ready. I'm just not ready. I need to have this much money in the bank. I'm just not ready." Well, none of us are really ever ready, right? Now I have 5 kids, and I never thought I could actually financially support 5 kids, but here we are. So you just do it.
I love that. I feel like a lot of especially from like clients, former clients, they're in this, like, especially in healthcare, where perfectionism, you have to be perfect, you can't make mistakes. And so this leads to this syndrome of have to read more, more podcasts, more coaching, all this stuff. And it just basically kicks the can down the road. Just it's a form of it's a rationalization to procrastinate more. And I feel like what you're doing is doing it out of faith and rather than out of fear. So if you do it out of faith, then basically you're coming from a place of abundance, and then fear is kind of scarcity and lack. But you talk about a faith-based business, and I've heard that term before. And I know some entrepreneurs, they talk about faith-based business, but we're not here promoting, but just tell, what it is and how it's helped you.
Yeah. I mean, I think you said that a lot, faith over fear type of thing, abundance over lack. That right there says a lot. But when I started my company, I said I wanted one of my core values to be faith and have a faith-based business. And that really is, to me, anybody wherever they're at on their journey, and to just be open to that. Especially, I'm in residential assisted living, so we're taking care of people at the end of life, taking care of families, and I just want them to feel comfortable with that and know that we really come from a place of sincerity and heart, and where we really want to spiritually connect with them and be able to provide for them whatever they need on their spiritual journey.
Yeah, I love that. And then the other thing is to talk about basically this idea of no limits, because once people transition from this mode of W-2, this where it's like, your employer controls holds the keys to literally holds the keys to your future. And then you have limits, but then you talk about becoming an entrepreneur and you have no limits. You have control over your, where your retirement assets go. Tell us more about this like idea of no limits here. Also, your income is no limits. It's up, it's on you. So tell us more.
Oh gosh. Well, I mean, I think you said a lot right there. It is limitless, right? I mean, you don't have anybody telling you what you're supposed to be making a year. You tell yourself that. So what kind of, again, back to the box, like what kind of box are you in? Thinking outside the box and just keep on growing type of thing. Setting your goals and aspirations, I think from the very beginning too, taking down all those walls. Why are you limiting yourself? And I know, I mean, I'm sure you've been in the same situation before too, where you can only think so far ahead. You're like, okay, well, yes, this is what I want to do. This is my goal. And then you get there and then it's, okay, well, what's next, right? Like you got to keep expanding. You got to keep thinking bigger and bigger. And that's where I think it's really great too, to have some supportive people around you and mentors and other successful people, because they're going to really help open your eyes too, where you might think with limits. But when you start talking to them, then they start opening your mind. You're like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, I am limiting myself. Okay, I can think bigger. Like, how big can we make this type of thing? Yeah, sky's the limit for sure.
Yeah, I love that. What were some of the reasons, before we talk about, why you chose assisted living as that niche, what were some of the resources, like either books, podcasts, YouTube channel, that you look to gain inspiration, get ideas, get mental frameworks, etc.?
First and foremost, I think networking is huge. I love networking, being around other entrepreneurs, being around other people that are going after their dreams and chasing something more. So that's one big piece. But in terms of the other stuff, like you were talking about, podcasts, I love just Google searching different ones and listening to something different all the time, kind of whatever's on my heart, right? Like if I'm trying to think in abundance, I'm searching with that, or mindset coaching. There's a whole bunch, like Lewis Howes. I don't know, I'd listen to a bunch of different people, and same with YouTube. Constantly just trying to fill my mind. I sleep with sleep meditation stuff on, whether it's abundance or gratitude, or there's always something going into my subconscious. Yeah, affirmations in the morning, but again, just always positive things, always things that are speaking to what I'm going after. Came across you with financial freedom, like that's so big right now. And, just kind of whatever I'm focused on at that time, to be feeding myself that, and always reading. Always got to be reading something good.
I love that. It's like, it's like, I love podcasts. I love Audible, working out, driving, especially driving in, traffic, and it's just like sitting there at the light, you could be using that time or waiting at, offices, and just, and I love this idea of just constantly feeding your mind. Basically you're training your RAS to focus in on what you feed it. So that, so important today's, there's so much negativity. Yeah. So now we'll talk about, basically, what prompted you. I've never talked to people investing in assisted living facilities. What prompted you to go into that niche?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we had some land and we were building 4 families. Okay, so we were set to build 9 4-families on this piece of property. We had already built 2, I guess, and then we were going to keep going from there. But also, I was doing other real estate investing. We're flipping homes, creating notes, flipping notes. I really enjoy that, by the way. But we went to a creative financing seminar and we heard of this residential assisted living concept. It's like, oh my gosh, like we can do this. Like I know the healthcare piece and we're doing real estate. We know how to build. We can do all this. Like, let's really like take a look at this. We're also putting my grandma into assisted living, right? So like there was that humanity piece of it. But from a numbers and investment standpoint, like, well, gosh, this checks all the boxes. So when we started looking at numbers and started doing some demographic research, I was like, oh my gosh, I could build another 7 4 families, and each one of these buildings is going to cost X amount, and then this is what we're going to be able to bring in. So having 36 total units on this piece of property, and at the time we were charging like $1,000 a month. So 36,000 was going to be the total monthly that we were going to gross. Then we looked into, okay, if we just did one of these buildings as residential assisted living, what would those numbers look like? I mean, it was astronomical, right? We could charge, at the time, it was like $6,000 a month per resident. We could have 16 residents in there. So what that gross was per month, and then at a 25, 30% profit margin, okay, wait, so we could build one building and I could generate this much income versus build 7 more buildings and total generate this much. Okay, we got to do this, right?
Yeah.
So we dove right in.
I love that. I love that concept. You just dove right in. How is, I also heard that self-storage is also, and is also becoming more popular. And but really, how, I'm not sure if you know, but how does it compare, like assisted living versus like self-storage, and if you know.
That's a great question. I'm really not sure how the numbers compare. What I will say about assisted living is, if you're the operator, obviously there's a whole lot that goes into that operation, right? Again, I would say we're not selling sweaters, we're not selling storage, we're truly taking care of people at end of life. So there's a lot that goes into the actual business side of it, but that's also so rewarding. I always said I want to do something, I want to be able to help people, I want to give back. So to me, like, residential assisted living is that completely. I mean, we're truly impacting lives, versus like storage for me, that's great as an investment, but how am I helping people, like, really from my heart? So yeah, I think that's where the big difference would be for me. Again, I don't know the numbers of self-storage, but yeah.
The other question I had was, because I've been reading this book called Plunder, and it's talking about private equity going in and basically buying up physician or healthcare facilities, practices, you name it, basically consolidate. You're basically a independent where you either build or buy these assisted living facilities, and basically, it's like real estate. Is that correct assumption?
Yeah. Yep. We build them or buy them and convert them, buy a building and convert it to be residential assisted living. And then, like I said, I'm actually consulting and coaching a lot of people right now on how to do this as well across the country. But you're talking about a corporation coming in and buying these out, and where we see a lot of opportunity, and where I really hope to expand this moving forward for people to create win-wins, is where you have real estate investors or people that just want to own the real estate. They have no interest in actually doing this business. They want to be part of the space because they know that it's growing. Like, this space is not going anywhere, right? People are getting older every day. So they want to own the real estate, but not do the business. Well, we're also teaching operators, and we're teaching people how to go in and run this business, but they don't have any interest in the real estate. So if we can connect the two and truly create win-wins, right? All day long. And I could show you calculator after calculator at looking at these properties and how huge the cash on cash return can be on this investor. And they have a long-term tenant, and, signing a 5-10 year lease and doing a triple net lease on top of that. I mean, it's huge, right?
Yeah.
Again, if I showed you the numbers, I think you'd be pretty impressed just from an investor standpoint. And then you have the operator, and they're making a great return, and teaching them how to go in and be able to quit their job pretty quickly to be able to do this and have their financial and time freedom as well. So
yeah. I love that. So interesting. So many opportunities, so many different strategies. How can people contact you? I know you're on most of the major social media platforms, and reach out to you, check out your work, etc.
Yeah. My name is Lindsay McLaughlin. So, I mean, you can find me on Facebook or Instagram. I think my Instagram is the Mompreneur Life 101, but my business is RAL Optimized, RAL Optimized. So if you go to RAL, you can contact us through there, or find me on Instagram or LinkedIn through there as well.
Yeah. And thanks so much for coming onto the podcast. For the audience, Lindsay's resources will be in the links and show notes. And thanks so much for a very enlightening episode. I'm sure a lot of people are really resonate with your message. And thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you. Have a great day.
I hope you really enjoyed that wonderful, inspirational, motivational piece. Again, if you
Wherever you are listening, if you liked it, be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe. We're on everywhere: Spotify, iTunes, Google, Amazon, Audible. And without much ado, be sure to thank this show's sponsors, and we'll see you next week.